Okay, so thanks everyone for coming. Welcome to you joining us on site and online to the Ocean Decade Conference, the satellite event, Catalyzing Source to Sea Synergies towards healthy rivers and a healthy ocean. My name is Gustav Tungren. I am a program manager at the Stockholm International Water Institute. I also represent the Action Platform for Source to Sea Management, a multi-stakeholder initiative to exchange and generate knowledge and support joint action for source to sea management. We have co-conveners as well, the Global Water Partnership, Plymouth Marine Laboratory, and Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. This session is also connected to endorsed programs of the Ocean Decade, the Ocean Acidification Research for Sustainability program, and the Healthy Rivers and Healthy Ocean, and we'll hear more about them shortly. We find ourselves in a planetary crisis that requires urgent action that is based on sound science. We also need systemic solutions where benefits are generated and shared, not only in societies, but for all life, and from source to sea. And today we do a deep dive. We will focus on the linkages, impacts, and connections across the water cycle, downstream from land to sea, and back upstream again. We will discuss what knowledge is needed, how to generate that knowledge, and find solutions that address the interlinked problems and synergize across sectors. We look toward moving from knowledge to action, from talking the talk to walking the walk. How do we get there? And here to help us make a splash is a stellar lineup of speakers. And the very first one, and I think few would be better to set the scene, is Alison Clausen, Program Specialist with the IOC UNESCO, Deputy Global Coordinator of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. Alison, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gustav, and welcome to everybody in the room. Thank you for getting up nice and early, and to the online audience. It's an absolute pleasure to be here for this satellite event, which is, of course, part of the whole Ocean Decade Week, which is culminating in the Ocean Decade Conference, which will start tomorrow. And it's, this I think is really testament to the very strong presence and visibility of the Source to Sea community, not only here this week and in the conference, but increasingly throughout the decade. As Gustav mentioned, there are now several programs that are focusing on Source to Sea, and we can really see this community coming to the fore. So I'd like to thank the partners, Seaweed, Global Water Partnership, Plymouth Marine Laboratory, and of course all the members of the Action Platform for Source to Sea Management, because not only have you coordinated and organised this event, but you really have been instrumental in getting the community engaged in the decade. Of course, there is unanimous agreement, I think, in this room and more broadly, that human activities are causing the state of ocean health to decline. But we know that many of these activities are land-based. So by talking only within the ocean community, we are not going to solve the problems. We need to make sure that we are working across the land-sea continuum, that the different threats, the pollutants, the contaminants that are arising from land-based activities are addressed. And so that's why, of course, considering Source to Sea is essential. It widens the perspective, it ensures that we can look at the linkages, but also, very importantly, it makes sure that we're talking to all the relevant stakeholders. In the Ocean Decade, we talk a lot about co-design, about co-delivery, about inclusivity, and that means that all the actors need to be in the room and having the discussions and working across the land-sea continuum so we can be breaking down the silos. We really hope from IOC UNESCO that the Ocean Decade can continue to provide a framework to contribute to this goal of source to sea management and this convening of actors, the creation of new partnerships, the creation of new discussions, and as Gustav said, translating these discussions to real action. The Ocean Decade is designed to contribute to all of the goals of the 2030 Agenda. Sometimes we forget that. We think very strongly about SDG 14. But of course, there are many other goals of the 2030 Agenda that have an ocean, a relationship, an ocean linkage, and that also have a freshwater linkage. These include SDG 6 on freshwater, SDG 11 on sustainable and resilient cities and communities, SDG 12 on consumption and production, which is one we don't talk about enough in the decade, and SDG 15 on ecosystems and biodiversity, just to name a few. So again, the decade can provide this framework, having SDG 14 as one of its focuses, but also trying to work across all the other SDGs that have these ocean freshwater links. The decade ambition is beyond the capacity of any single nation, any single stakeholder group, or any single scientific discipline. It's also beyond the narrow conception of ocean science and ocean knowledge that perhaps we've had in the past, and really seeks to embrace alternative knowledge systems. And that's why collaboration is crucial. And this conference this week is going to help us do this. It's really coming at a milestone moment for the decade. We're at the beginning of the 4th year of implementation, and it is a preset moment to reflect, to refine, and adapt the decade vision, its strategic ambition, to emerging opportunities. We've set in place a process over the last year, the Vision 2030 process, which I know many of you have been involved in, to help us look at each of the Ocean Decade challenges, see where there are gaps, see where there are emerging issues, see where we are not addressing the priorities in a systematic enough way. And what I'm very pleased to say for this community is that issue of source to sea management working across the land-sea continuum has come out time and time again through that process. There are different white papers around different ocean decade challenges, the white papers relating to marine pollution, to ecosystems, to ocean observations, to coastal resilience, are all talking about the fact that the decade needs to work more strongly and in a more structured and systematic way across the land-sea continuum, including with new communities of stakeholders. So this conference is the moment for the community, the Source to Sea community, to bring that message to a broader audience. Coming out of the conference, there will be an outcomes report, which will be a detailed set of recommendations to set the path forward for the next 3 to 5 years for the decade. And there will be a conference outcome statement, which will be a succinct, short statement that really talks about the aspirations of the conference. And we as a community need to make sure that the Source to Sea issues are reflected in those documents. So this satellite event is a fantastic place to start these discussions in the framework of the context, but then bring that to the conference over the next 3 days and make sure that through the thematic sessions, through the parallel sessions, these issues are coming up, and so that we can have a very strong representation of the community, of the issues in the outcomes of the conference, that we can then also take forward to other key moments in the global ocean agenda, including the Our Ocean Conference in Athens next week, and of course leading up to the 2025 United Nations Ocean Conference in Nice in June next year. So thank you all for being here. I'm looking forward to hearing some of the discussions, although I apologise in advance, I will have to leave partway through. But really, I do encourage you to bring these issues from this event today through the conference, and let's make sure it is reflected in the conference outcome statement. So thank you all very much, and I wish you a wonderful event this morning.
Okay, and we're soon up to date here. Thank you, Alison, for those very kind words and very inspiring words for the Source to Sea community, and the warm welcome to the conference at large. I bet you're one of the busiest people here this week. Next up are 2 presentations about 2 Ocean Decade endorsed programs, and we will that are connected to this satellite event. I welcome Amy Kenworthy and Dimitris Faloutsos to the stage to give presentations. Amy, you're up first, so please join us up here.
Great. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for being here, and thank you for inviting me to speak. It's a great honour. One of our strategic commitments at Plymouth Marine Laboratory is to address source-to-sea related issues, including ocean acidification, which is why I'm here to speak to you today. So as you heard, I'm Amy Kenworthy, and I'm the Project Officer for the United Nations Ocean Decade Endorsed Programme Ocean Acidification Research for Sustainability, also known as OARS, which is co-led by Plymouth Marine Laboratory, the University of Washington, and IOC UNESCO. So perhaps let's first talk about what ocean acidification is and why, if carbon dioxide is the primary driver, are we concerned about terrestrial and riverine inputs. So at least 25% of the CO2 that we have emitted has been taken up by the ocean, where it reacts with seawater, resulting in ocean acidification. And this has adverse effects on marine life and ecosystems, for example, by making it harder for calcifying organisms such as shellfish, coral reefs, and plankton to form their shells. So traditionally, the conversation has naturally been focused on the CO2 uptake, and indeed, we must continue to reduce our CO2 emissions globally. However, research has also shown that ocean acidification can be more extreme and rapid in coastal waters and than it is in the open ocean. And in some areas that might be due to upwelling, which brings nutrient-rich and CO2-rich waters with it, but nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus in agriculture, runoff and sewage discharge can also cause a decrease in pH levels as they cause plankton blooms, which when the plankton then dies, it releases CO2 and depletes oxygen, which leads to increased ocean acidification. So how is the OARS program contributing to the source-to-sea conversation? Well, OARS was put forward by the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, known as GOAN, which is a group of over 900 scientists working towards observing the changes in ocean chemistry. And they're working towards understanding the impacts that has on marine life and developing ways to predict ocean acidification and its impacts going into the future. So GOAN saw the need for expanding the community of science to a community of practice, going beyond just addressing SDG target 14.3 to minimize and address the impacts of ocean acidification, including through enhanced scientific cooperation at all levels, to enhanced multi-sectoral cooperation. And we do this by connecting and providing guidance and leadership to a multi-sectoral community of scientists, NGOs, communication and education professionals, decision makers and citizens to deliver the knowledge and actions required to mitigate, manage and adapt to ocean acidification. And as OA, as a result of human activities on land, it is important that we go beyond only working with those in marine management and also bring into the conversation those making decisions that influence what happens on land and to rivers. So when we consider the importance of coastal areas to our economies, be that from shellfish aquaculture or fisheries, seaside tourism or human health, which all suffer from polluted waters or ocean acidification, we can demonstrate the importance of addressing the issue at its source. For example, water companies can play a role in minimizing coastal acidification by, for example, ensuring that the infrastructure is in place to avoid sewage entering rivers and the ocean. And at the same time, they'll actually directly contribute towards protecting the health of citizens who use that area as a place of recreation. So we're proud to share with you today that we have just published our 7 white papers as an IOC technical report, which provide a vision for what the OARS community wants to achieve and the key activities, outputs, and partners needed to tackle ocean acidification. And some of those partners, again, will need to be from outside of the traditional ocean community. So within these white papers, you'll find the work of the OARS Working Group 2, which has outlined 6 key decision-making categories, and I won't be able to go into them very much in detail today, but as you can see down here, and some of those are also focused on decision-making on land, so pressures from land-based pollution. So I'd like to invite you to download that infographic and have a look at it, and while you're on the OARS Commitments website, which is where you'll find that, please also have a look at whether maybe the work that you're doing has can have impact on the OARS outcomes and register a commitment. So the fact that I'm here today speaking to you about this issue as someone not from a traditional marine research background, but rather from the field of environmental management and science communication is an indicator of the inclusive nature of OARS. And we'd like to welcome you all to think about what you can do within your industry or discipline to combat ocean acidification, be that by taking direct action, by helping us understand the problem better, or by communicating the issue to decision makers or society as a whole. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and also those online. Thank you for participating in this meeting. Dimitris Faloutas from Global Water Partnership. I'm going to briefly present another endorsed program that is not directly linked with the previous one, but there is cohesion as both seek to give solutions and address issues that of issues, the drivers of which are sitting upstream in the land. It's Healthy Rivers for Healthy Oceans. It's co-coordinated by Global Water Partnership, the Stockholm International Water Institute, and the International Oceanographic Commission. And the why. As Alison said, Source to Sea came into the scene the past years just because it was well understood that there are major disconnects when it comes to policy and management among the different segments of the Source to Sea continuum. And this leads to failures when it comes to identifying the issues and also to providing responses to those issues. The Healthy Rivers for Healthy Oceans program has an aim to develop and implement the systemic action to take into account the interdependencies between the freshwater and marine ocean communities and management, so as to advance the achievement of the SDGs. It has 3 pillars. It is about bringing knowledge into the scene, taking into the scene in terms of bringing knowledge to take informed decisions from land to the sea, the Source to Sea continuum, to have in place partnerships and catalyze action. Very briefly, it came from practice, from practical knowledge. There is not enough monitoring, there's not enough knowledge that could, in the form, although there is enough research, in the form that can be used for decision making. That goes in different, it's true for different segments, but when it comes especially from the Source to Sea, there's not very good understanding of what are the mechanisms, although in research we do understand, but so as to inform the decision making. Also, we have the new technologies in place, and the aim is to have artificial intelligence, to have remote sensing, to have all those technologies that can be used so as to have sustainable monitoring in systems in different countries, to advance the capacities and of different countries so as to have sustainable monitoring systems, and moreover to use this for informed decision making. That is by bringing closer those that have the knowledge, which is the research on the one hand, the research institutes, but on the other hand, the private sector that holds all these technologies that make the knowledge more easier to come up with and more accessible for the decision makers and the general public. The latter one, so as to create ownership, to understand what's going on and provide solutions. The second is about having partnerships on board. We have the research community, we have the private sector, we have stakeholders, we have different stakeholder groups, we have decision makers. The fact that the management is following a sectoral approach, and thank you. we need to bring all those stakeholders together. First to understand what's going on and then to have concerted action. This is being done through the Ocean Decade, but we need to do this in different areas around the world where there are already communities, either political or economic communities, so as to act all together and to understand what's going on, to understand the benefits of working together, and moreover, to have commitments at the regional level that then can be find a way diffused into the national legislations and way things are, and policy making and way things are done. And the third one is actually to catalyze action on the ground, to have, using these partnerships, to have, on the one hand, the research and those that can actually analyze the systems, understand what are the drivers to the different causes, but to bring also decision makers and the donor community and the investors and private sector to have them all together, on the one hand, understand what's going on, and the other one, to identify those solutions that are fit for purpose. These are three pillars, interlinked, and with the assistance of different actors around the world, we're trying to have them channeled through different processes globally with the three organizations, so as to catalyze action for the source to sea action. Yeah, that's not very proper English, but thank you. Either way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Dimitris, for those statements. And we hope to reconnect with you later in this session for some key reflections of the panel, which we are about to have. Before we do that, I would like to just play a video. And, you know, you always hope and pray that the technology gods will help you when you play a video like this. But here goes. This is from Maaike van Ginneken. She's the water envoy for the Kingdom of Netherlands. And we asked her to make a video statement to this panel today, or to this session. So let's hope it works.
Welcome to the Ocean Decade Conference. My name is Maaike van Ginneken. I'm the water envoy for the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And I mostly work on freshwater systems. But I also realize that we can only manage our water resources if we really take an integrated approach from the source to the sea. We need to keep our oceans healthy. And a lot of the actions of keeping our oceans healthy actually are land-based. They're in our river basins, they are protecting our aquifers. Because our freshwater systems are what feed our oceans, this is how new water enters our oceans. It's how sediments, which are very important for marine ecosystems, enter our oceans. But rivers and other freshwater systems are also the source of the majority of pollutants in the oceans. 80% of plastic pollution comes from land-based sources. And so do nutrients, so do other pollutants. We really need to make sure we have healthy and clean oceans, and that starts with cleaning up our freshwater systems. This will become even more important in the coming decades because so many people live near coastal areas. The majority of people live within 100 kilometers from the coast. They live in deltas, they live on islands. They all interact with the ocean directly or indirectly on a daily basis. So as we develop our deltas, our coastal areas more, let's take into account what happens in our oceans. Let's make sure we do not pollute our oceans. So let's take a water management approach that goes all the way from the source to the sea, because our water cycle does not distinguish between freshwater and saltwater. Let me end by posing a question to the panel. As I said in the beginning, I work a lot on freshwater systems, on basin management, on aquifer management, on how do we really manage our surface and groundwater. What I would like to ask the panel is, how do we take healthy oceans into account as we manage these freshwater systems? Because often riparian countries from along the river sit around the table, but we often do not hear the voice of oceans. And that's what you have today. You have freshwater management, but you also have people who know a lot about oceans. I wish you a very fruitful discussion at this ocean conference.
Thank you to Maaike van Ginneken for sending that message. I will ask all panelists to come to stage. We will just roll up the screen and we'll put up a few chairs. So if I could get Isa and Steve and Cynthia and Rubens to please come up. And I hope we have Cynthia here in the audience. Okay. Yeah, okay. So you can hear me? Loud and clear also in the audience? Yes, I can hear my own voice now. So we are, as you could tell, we are missing a panelist. It has become an unfortunate manual at this point. This is not by design, but we hope Cynthia Barsuna will join us shortly. But we do have a very distinguished panel regardless, and I'm very happy to introduce Professor Steve Widdicombe, Director of Science and Deputy Chief Executive at Plymouth Marine Laboratory. We have Dr. Isa Olakelan Elegbede, I hope I pronounced that correctly, with many affiliations, but Brandenburg University and University of Lagos and Future Earth Coast, as well as the early career ocean professionals. We also have Rubens Filho of the Brazilian UN Global Compact, Executive Manager of Environment. So welcome, warmly welcome to this panel. And of course we heard a question from Maaike, and we will not start with that, but rather, Steve, I want to start with you. You are a marine ecologist for 30 years. You worked on interrelated issues such as climate change, biodiversity, and ecosystem functions. And in particular, you work on global ocean acidification. So there are multiple pressures that impact the health of the ocean. And from your perspective, why and how do source-to-sea linkages, including upstream and downstream effects, matter for ocean health, climate change, and the blue economy? Please.
Okay, well, thank you very much. First of all, I'd just like to say how fantastic it is to have an event like this here. I know it's the Ocean Decade conference, but I think the narrative around source-to-sea and expanding from ocean issues to the sources of where many of those problems come from is so important. I was honoured to be part of the first event at last year's Climate COP, where the Water Pavilion and the Ocean Pavilion came together to give the sort of first source-to-sea event at a forum such as that. But I think we really need to capitalise on. We've heard a lot of people talk about. We recognise the issues. We recognise that there aren't single ocean issues or single freshwater issues. It's all connected. Yet still, these kind of events are unusual, and they need to be mainstreamed. We need to do that much more regularly. And I think, as you said, my background is in ocean acidification. Amy gave a fantastic presentation sort of illustrating the importance of understanding the sources of where that coastal acidification is coming from. But all sorts of issues that we're struggling with in the coastal zone have their origins in terrestrial or freshwater systems. And I think to give you an example of kind of where we've come from, many years ago, I was invited by the UK Research Council to go to a meeting to discuss issues around biodiversity and ecosystem services, in the understanding that they were going to fund a programme around supporting a study into biodiversity and ecosystem services. And I turned up on this meeting to find out that the day before, the terrestrial and freshwater community had met with the Research Council to talk about the things that they were interested in. And the two communities were kept completely separate, and we had completely different conversations, but we're probably talking about the same things. And I think that needs to stop. And there are signs that we're moving to a more integrated situation. That very same Research Council is now supporting work that we're part of, which is looking at it through a project called Locate, which has just finished, about how carbon is transitioned from terrestrial moorland systems down through the river and out into the coastal zone. And those are exactly the kind of things we want to do. But one final thing I'd like to say, I noticed in your question you talked about what can we do to support the blue economy. And this is a little bit of an aside, but I think it's really important we start this conversation. Words like the blue economy, to me, start from a premise that the ocean, that rivers, that nature are there as a resource for us to exploit, without, in my opinion, giving those systems the true respect that they deserve. I would be keen to push forward with the narrative that actually we are part of that system, and the research we do and the management decisions we take should be less about an exploitative extraction type relationship with nature and those systems, and try to develop a more responsible, ethical, respectful relationship between us as part of that system and nature itself. Similar to the One Health concept that's being advocated by the World Health Organization, I think we can learn from that and appreciate the fact that we have to really examine the activities we undertake, the influence that has on rivers and the ocean, and think about how we generate science and management outcomes which are supportive of a more respectful, ethical relationship between us and nature.
Thank you, Steve, and great to hear these reflections. I mean, respecting nature, sharing benefits. I will turn it over to Isa and hear how these points land with you. But first, you are an environmental scientist focused on marine sustainability. You're involved in many different roles, and as we can see, I mentioned a few already, but in particular, you represent the early career ocean professionals as co-coordinator of the West African region, and you also work with the Ocean Decade Vision 2030 and the Work Group 7. Which is about expanding the global ocean observance system. Welcome to this panel discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
And I will ask you to maybe consider what Steve said, but also then maybe looking at today's landscape, what is our current understanding of the linkages from your perspective, and what type of knowledge is missing? What do we need to move forward, and how do we fill the knowledge gap?
Yeah, thanks so much for this privilege and for inviting me to this panel discussion. Yeah, it has been well said by Steve. Then I would like to add my input coming from the early career perspective. As a researcher, I realize the concept of leaving no one behind in the context of knowledge is yet to be achieved in achieving the ocean decade goal. For example, in the context of knowledge, there is need for inclusivity. Inclusivity in terms of understanding the different parameters of knowledge in ocean and all coastal and aquatic resources integration. So we need to include all parameters, all individuals, and as well, even those people that are coastal communities that are not literate, because they might have historical and traditional knowledge that can be synergized with what we have to assist in the direction of where we are going. In addition, there is need for co-designing, because For example, I worked a lot in Canada as an OFI fellow, and I realized I learned a lot in terms of working with the indigenous community. Because we all know, for example, that Canada has a vast aquatic resources. However, they are yet to explore all compared to Norway, that has limited compared to Canada. But with this, it shows that at one of the fora, we realized that the issue of neglecting these people is a problem. So hence, it is important that we do what is called co-design in any aspect of knowledge we are working on, to bring everybody on board and make sure that we don't just grab and dump knowledge instrument to the people. So we should start from beginning, and we should ensure that it cut across. And apart from that, it's important to consider, in terms of knowledge, interdisciplinarity, because one field cannot do it all. There's a need to include the biological, the biogeochemical, the physical, even down to the society, the human dimensions of knowledge. So bringing all this together will assist in achieving the desired goal that we expect. And apart from that, there's need for holistic evaluation metrics to have a robust, because I'm a sustainability expert, marine sustainability expert, so I work more on indicators and also connected to the ocean and coastal resources. So it's important that we have a robust and holistic evaluation metrics, that we know where we're coming from, where we are, and the future, where we are going. So this is important. And lastly, there's need for continual knowledge, continual learning and adaptation dynamics. So we need to see how we can always cope when there are issues in the context of knowledge. Now, in the context of ECOP, we are trying a lot to work on capacity building to see how we can integrate all stakeholders. However, we are still challenged with resources such as funding. For example, this ECOP, this Ocean Delegate Conference, many ECOP applied. However, many of them could not get access, and many of them could not even get funding to attend. So it is important that when we want to, because the future are this ECOP, the LA carrier. So not only the LA carrier, even down to the children, because we have the CYMG of the UN, the Children and Youth Organization. So we should always find a way to support them in the context of resource mobilization. And lastly, then system thinking is important. So let's think beyond the box. Sometimes we can even think in the context that there is no box. So that we have freedom of intellectual contribution. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And we'll certainly come back to a few of the points you raised. I mean, there's a lot to it. I mean, the importance of inclusivity, the importance of holistic and systemic kind of approaches and views, perspectives, as well as the building capacity, allowing finance streams to come through, and very important issues. And I think we'll come back to it a little bit later. I'm also very, very happy to introduce Rubens Filho. Welcome to the panel. Very happy to have you here. You are work for the UN Global Compact in Brazil. You are a project manager and have worked with source to sea management as part of Blue Keeper, as I understand it. And Rubens, in your experience from your day-to-day, and from the ground perspective that you do have, and involving a lot more, probably wider diversity of actors in your work, why and how does source to sea systems linkages matter for ocean health? What's your perspective?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to share the panel with Steve and Anissa. In Brazil, we are running this project that is called the Blue Keepers, as you mentioned. It's a project that is related to reducing the plastic pollution in ocean, but not only the plastic, but the leaders themselves. So As you mentioned, we are dealing with several actors, several stakeholders, from beverages and food companies to private water and sanitation utilities. When we think of the linkages within SIS2 systems, of course, we have to take into account the sanitation, for example, perspective. A lot has been mentioned about the acidification of ocean and the relation of nutrients and the sanitation. What we are realizing now in our project is that we've mapped out over 600 we call entrances, because entrances can mean lagoon, mangrove, or rivers. And they are the very important entrances or upstreams that are related to the lack of sanitation and also the leaders too. So when we mapped out this in Brazil, we realized that unfortunately we have to hardly work for more sanitation systems, because 90 million out of 200 million people in Brazil live in houses without sanitation systems, sewer systems, and this is negatively impacting the ocean itself, and it is impacting the mangroves, impacting lagoons and rivers. And those actors, they have a very important, a very crucial role in this project in understanding and generating data, so we can have more actors together from the public sector to private sector. So this is what we are focusing now. We are focusing on understanding what are the main issues, what are the main topics related to those issues, and what are the solutions. We can think of innovative solutions or technology, but first of all, we need to think of the basic solution, that is providing sanitation for all and maintaining all the fresh water systems so we can have a healthy ocean.
Thank you. Great insights, and also from the ground, and very fascinating to hear about these 600 entrances that you have mapped out and how that affects. I want to ask you a quick follow-up question is, with these actors, what type of knowledge are they missing at this point? How can we at the Ocean Decade Conference contribute to your work?
Well, we need to understand better what are the impacts of, for example, the nutrient loads into ocean, but in terms of the lack of sanitation. So we are very aware of the lack of sanitation impact on health, for example, but not very much into ocean. And when I say that, I say in terms of the Brazil data, right? Not the worldwide data. Because I know most of you have been working with some data from your countries, but in Brazil, mainly, we need to understand better what are the impacts in algal blooms, for example, or dead zones, and etc. We've been working very closely with a private water and sanitation utility, HRHO, that is here, is from Brazil. They are mapping out with us those impacts and how this is affecting the health ocean, the ocean health. So they are working in 500 municipalities in Brazil, providing sanitation. So what we are trying to understand is what was the impact before having sanitation, and what can be the impact now with the sanitation. But of course, we need more science, we need more people sharing with us those data and contributing.
Thank you. And I'm very pleased to introduce our latest panel member and warmly welcome. Cynthia Barsuna, you work with the World Resources Institute. You are the director of the Ocean Action 2030, a volunteer coalition dedicated to supporting countries through development and implementation of sustainable ocean plans to build a sustainable ocean economy. And before you joined WRI, you were the Deputy Minister of Water and Ocean Affairs from Costa Rica. So warmly welcome, and I'm going to throw you right into the conversation. I hope you're okay with that. So of course, given your experience working both with governance, policy, and mobilizing changes in your current role, would you agree that the knowledge and appreciation of source to sea, land to sea linkages could or should be applied more holistically to address challenges such as biodiversity, climate change? If so, what steps would you propose to be taken? What type of knowledge is missing in that cross-sectoral kind of landscape? So, thank you.
Thank you for that question, and good morning, buenos días a todos. Thank you for the opportunity. And yes, I think, I do believe there's a huge gap between these ecosystems. It's very much needed, and this holistic approach needs to take place one step at a time, but then it's urgent. And one of the things that, as a part of leading the coalition, has shown me with working with 18 different countries from the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy from the different continents, is that basically in each and every of these countries, whether we're talking about Namibia or we're talking about UK or we're in Chile or Mexico or Jamaica, any of these countries have a common thread, and that is that working in silos has never been the solution, and one of the things that they have been working on is basically the connection between these lost linkages by having intergovernmental connections, by creating the right committees, by creating the right coordination between several ministries. When it comes to the ocean, we have to think about finance, we have to think about biodiversity laws, climate change, and the ocean is the biggest ally, actually, to deliver on the right solutions that we need, on ocean-based solutions. And for that to happen, we need the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change to coordinate, but also the different agencies that have to do with management. But considering all the stakeholders as well, the participatory processes have to be very open, have to be inclusive, equity has to be at the center of things. And there's this 3P mantras from the Ocean Panel on prosperity, protection, and production. So basically, you need to create blue jobs that make sense for coastal communities and for them to understand the value of the conservation. They have to deal with upstream problems, everything that comes from land, and it's pollutants, is plastics, is, agriculture, cities produce several challenges for the ocean. And for this to happen, you need a holistic approach, for sure. I could comment on what we have been working on, which is quite interesting. From our perspective, we have almost 20. It's 19 so far, but we'll keep you posted on that. We're becoming 20 members very shortly, of NGOs, but also from development banks, also we have members like the World Bank, like the GEF, working together in this coalition towards delivering the technical and financial assistance needed to develop sustainable ocean plans. Sustainable ocean plans are the headline and the core of the ocean action agenda from the Ocean Panel, from these members that are leaders around the world that decided to commit to delivering 100% sustainable ocean management through sustainable ocean plans. So that's a great example on how to connect and have the capacity to link land and ocean, green and blue, and to deliver on systematic solutions. Sustainable ocean plans is just a tool to deliver on that. It has to be dynamic. It has to be changing. But those plans can actually tackle climate change. They can tackle biodiversity loss. And they can also refer to SDG 14 and deliver on sustainable development of the ocean. So it basically brings all of this together. It's an excellent tool for countries to deliver on their national adaptation plans, on their NDCs, and also on the new global biodiversity framework. especially Target 1 refers to planning. So this is the holistic approach and the holistic planning that needs to take place in order to deliver. These are good examples we can share, and you can see in our website lots of knowledge sharing, capacity building, and for practitioners, but also for stakeholders to be involved in the whole process since the beginning. So this could be a good practice. It could lead the way towards that linkage that you were discussing about.
Thank you so much. And I will now kind of try to get everyone to respond to the same question. I think we all kind of been addressing a little bit differently the knowledge gaps, what's missing, interlinkages, etc., and the need for kind of holistic approaches, and the enormous impact that land-based activities has on the ocean. And I wanted to get back to Maaike van Gineken's question, and I'll remind you of it because that was the video and it was quite long ago. But she asked, how do we take healthy oceans into account as we manage freshwater systems? And I think this, I would also like to ask you in reverse, what would you like to know from the freshwater communities? Like, how can we speak to each other? So I think, Steve, you haven't talked in a while, so I'll start with you, and then we'll go Isa and Rubens and Cynthia.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to start that answer by actually picking up on something that's already been said. And I think it's fantastic to hear you mention sustainable ocean plans, because we're now starting to talk about action. And we've talked about knowledge gaps, but actually what we cannot do is allow any perceived lack of complete understanding or call for yet more data or more science to get in the way of taking action. We know enough about a lot of things to start to take action. We know that plastic and litter is a problem. We need to take action. We know that nutrient pollution of coastal waters coming from rivers is a problem. We need to take action. We know that coastal acidification is being driven by riverine and land-based action. We need to take action. I'm a scientist myself, and I can't believe I'm advocating for this. We'll always call for more money to do more science. But let's not allow that to get in the way of actually tackling the problems in front of us. We do know enough to start to act. So in terms of, then your question was around what do we now need to actually start to manage those things. So
the question was, how do we take healthy oceans into account as we manage freshwater systems?
And vice versa.
And vice versa,
if you want
to address that as well.
Again, I wrote down 3 things that really we don't do very well. And it's a lot around the siloization of the conversations. We talk, and I spoke earlier around the problems in terms of traditional funding mechanisms. We're seeing a rise in funding for projects that do address source to sea issues, but still they're in the minority. Much of the funding is directed towards ocean or towards freshwater or terrestrial systems, and those communities are working in parallel and separate and not having the appropriate conversations. Meetings such as these, again, it's important that we integrate the communities, not just have token freshwater people at ocean conferences or have token ocean people at freshwater conferences, but we fully integrate and give a platform for people to have conversations and co-design, as we say, within the communities to understand that. And then something we haven't talked about is data. I find it quite strange that many of our databasing and data archives and resources are again siloed. We have national oceanographic data centres or freshwater centres, and I've seen instances where nutrient data for freshwater and terrestrial systems go to one place. We lost I think it's back again. Go to one place and the marine data goes to somewhere else. Now, I'm not suggesting that we have one big global database, but at least we need to develop federated systems where we can access and visualize those data and bring them together and start to break down those walls that currently sit between the sectors.
Thank you, Steve. I think, Isa, you were next, and let's try to keep the answers a little bit short so we can get to the very next question as well. Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much. In a week to take care of the ocean to accommodate for managing the freshwaters. So I would like to connect to your statement on data. Yeah, data is very important, because we as humans, we are more familiar with freshwater resources than marine, than the ocean. So it's important that we look at a framework that we can understand what is happening in the ocean. Another thing that I would like to talk about is the aspect of engaging the citizens in the concept of citizen science. So these people, like I've said earlier, they have historical background of these resources, the coastal resources. So it's important that we bring them on board, and also we also include them in making a decision. Now, before data, we need to know what happens in the ocean, and that talks about probably decolonizing the knowledge. So we need to challenge our colonial and hegemonic forms of knowledge production, and to see how we can make it more inclusive. Let me go back to that word. More inclusive in a way that we can achieve the goal that we desire for the ocean decade, and understanding that we need to carry everybody along to leave no one behind. Apart from that, resources is important, the funding is important. It's important to see how we can empower contributors, not only scientists, not only researchers, however, people that contribute to knowledge. So because knowledge economy is a broad ecosystem, so we need to see how we can empower them, and possibly capacity building is important. That is to start from cradle to adults. Let me stop from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Great response, and very interesting regarding decolonizing knowledge, being inclusive of diverse values, perspectives, and also how to bridge that in terms of resources, capacity building, etc. Rubens, please, the floor is yours. Same question.
In a nutshell, representing the business community here, I see there's a mismatch, right, between freshwater and ocean initiatives led by them. So in this case, I would encourage, to incorporate freshwater and ocean data in a unique platform, like thinking of a national perspective, right? Because as human beings, we only take action when we see consequences. So if we see that we are wasting a precious time, leading initiatives, only thinking of water availability, but not water quality in this case, probably we will not see a point of taking more action to preserve and to keep the sustainability of the ocean. So when preserving riparian zones or wetlands, for example, and thinking of the business community, for example, we are not only thinking of water quantity, we need to incorporate water quality and the consequences for the ocean. So for that, if this happen, in a more precise way, probably we'll have more actions in the future.
Thank you. And yep, great. And Cynthia, please, the same, very same question to you, and then I think we'll do a quick question, and then we'll turn to the audience.
Thank you. I believe there's no wealthy ocean without a healthy ocean. So part of the solution is considering people, nature, and climate. I think you all kind of referred to that. Policy coherence is very important. So I think there's a gap there that needs to be balanced, that needs to find better ways. We need better finance and governance schemes to develop. And also, we haven't discussed, or maybe you have previously, around the issues about sharing basins and how does that look like, and how to manage that in the bigger picture of connecting with the ocean and bringing in all the stakeholders. I'm glad to see that the private sector is sitting here today with us, because that's one of the main complaints we get all the time, like not having the private sector, which brings innovation, which brings a lot of ocean data to the table. So it could also and when it comes to shipping, there's a lot of information that we're not using for other purposes, right? So that kind of information, that kind of working in silos is we could work towards a solution that basically includes this. I worked for more than 20 years in sustainable cities, and then I turned into the ocean, and the problem seems to be the same. Policy coherence, governance, and that can only be achieved if you take into account all of these stakeholders.
Fantastic. Policy coherence, policy integration earlier across governmental sectors, and also balancing data sets that take into account water and ocean, holistic frameworks, inclusivity of values and perspectives, and stakeholders that are non-traditional to maybe sustainable development, increasingly so. I think we had a really, really interesting conversation. I did just have a look at the time, and I think it is indeed time to let in the audience. So I would be interested, I'm going to ask one question, and then I'm going to take some hands, but in one thing that can, in your view, can connect science to policy to action. What is the top priority? And maybe I will ask you, Rubens, to lead with that, and then I'll take some hands. So, please.
Just one?
Just one, lightning round. We'll go from your end to this end.
Well, to me, it's action. We need to act as fast as possible. Time is running out. Climate change is here now. So probably I'll definitely choose the word action, because we have enough of technology, data, well, more or less, but sometimes we have so much data, we have so much technology, but we do not have actions, so have action.
Okay, action. Action is the key word. Isa, same question to you.
Yes, I will say, coming from the sustainability perspective, I would say long-term resource mobilization, because I think we know that amongst all the SDGs, SDG 14 is probably one of the least funded. So we need a long-term resource mobilization as well. Also connecting to SDG 17 that talks about partnership. The Global North and the Global South needs to synergize and needs to work together. Then, yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Cynthia, same question, please.
To keep it short, maybe partnerships. We haven't mentioned that, and they're very important, public and private partnerships, but also the kind of partnerships that can help deliver in between changes of government. For example, in Costa Rica, it's for a year, so that's a very short period to accomplish what you need to accomplish in time. So for that, you need to create a systematic approach.
And quickly for me, to go back to where I kind of started, we talked about stakeholders, but let's remember that the ocean, rivers and nature is a stakeholder in this conversation, often gets forgotten. So I would continue to advocate that we take management decisions that don't necessarily look to preferentially benefit us as a species, but co-benefit us alongside nature.
Fantastic. Okay, so action, improved resource mobilization, partnerships, and likewise respect for nature as an equal partner in this venture. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I will now turn it to the audience, and I will just take a mic, I think, from one of you and give it to our colleague here. And I wonder if there's any questions in the audience. Okay, we got a few, so I'm just going to... I saw you in the back over there, and then to the right here. So please in the back, and then we'll take you to the right here. So please say your name and keep it short. And if you have a specific question to a specific person, please say the name. Thank you.
Yeah, so my question is more of a broad one for the general program, and perhaps some of the speakers might want to touch on it as well. I guess I'm curious to what extent the whole conversation. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Nathan Bennett. I'm the Global Oceans Lead Scientist for WWF. Yeah, so I'm curious to what extent the whole Healthy Rivers for Healthy Oceans program and/or broader conversation in this area is taking into account blue foods And here I just want to point to a report for WWF that was prepared by Jeff Opperman, which is called Rivers of Food. And in that report, what he shows is that 1/3 of all global food production relies on river systems. And then in particular, in relation to blue foods, 40% of total fish production in the world relies on rivers in some ways. And then, so that includes both direct freshwater catch as well as aquaculture systems, 68% of which rely directly on river systems, and then marine fish catches that spend a portion of their life within rivers. So you know, just from those statistics, you can see the incredible importance of rivers for blue food. So to what extent is that conversation happening? Is the program taking that into account?
So I think, in short, how are we connecting to the food systems in this conversation? Is that a good, very succinct summary? And I think I will probably hand it first to you, Cynthia, to respond to this question, and I will then also ask Steve. So please, Cynthia. And yeah, maybe we could, please, thank you.
Definitely a very relevant question, of course. We are going to depend more and more on blue foods, and we have IUU, we have overfishing, we have pollutants and plastic to think about. And I heard John Kerry mention this in Plough at our Ocean conference some years ago, that we were basically eating one plastic credit card a week. So if that's the case, then how can we rely on the ocean for food security? And we already know that we need to look into the ocean when it comes to climate change as a source for food. So it's a very relevant question. I think the solution for that, of course, working in assisting countries in their aim to develop and implement sustainable ocean plans. One of the things that I really like about sustainable ocean plans is that it has that holistic approach where blue foods is considered, where small-scale fisheries are considered, where also the solutions for sustainable fisheries for the future and the best practices are applied. So I think it starts at home, it starts with every country, and then it expands to the bigger conversation. And of course, the 30 by 30, the conservation, to basically preserve and all of this very important ecosystems to actually deliver on the very much blue foods and food security that we need from the ocean. So I would say this is a very tangible and doable approach from countries to deliver. There's a huge chapter on blue foods and on sustainable ocean planning. So that's one of the steps and one of the actions that is actually happening and could happen. I mean, the countries of the Ocean Panel make up 50% of the coastlines worldwide. We need a 100% approach for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I thank you very much. It's a very interesting answer. And I think, Rubens, you wanted to have a quick response to that question as well. So
yeah, very quick. We will start a food system initiative in Brazil at the UN Global Compact, and we will add the blue food part in the project to mobilize the business sector to invest and advocate for it.
Okay, thank you. So I think we will actually move to the next audience question now. And Steve, if you want to come in later, you can always, but please go ahead. And do state your name and try to keep it very brief and succinct,
Sure.
please.
Thank you. Jessica Brown, I'm from the Back to Blue initiative. My question relates to the joining up of freshwater and ocean data sets. And, you know, thanks to technologies such as satellite monitoring, machine learning, we've got a very sophisticated understanding of the way ocean currents move, of the way temperature changes, and we can forecast into the future what this is going to look like. Are you aware of, you know, any attempts really to link this up with freshwater data sets that would allow us to start to understand what impact freshwater pollution is having and will have on the global ocean?
Okay, thank you. Fantastic question. And I think we have two very capable respondents in this case. And in Isa, I think you're already grabbing the mic, so please go ahead.
Yes, talking about data, yeah, we realized that majority of the anthropogenic activities that contribute to the freshwater resources still connect to the ocean. So in this context, there is need to have a robust data infrastructure system, a data system that follows the useful standards. For example, like the FAIR standard. We have the FAIR standard, we have the trust standard, we have many standards like that. So all these will assist. And also we should not forget that the freshwater are mostly used or contributed by the people. So that's where the citizen science comes in. So the citizens has to be in place and has to be inclusive in collecting this data. And there should be a standardized protocol to collect this data so that it will be useful. And as well, we know that the ocean, it's very expensive to collect data from the ocean. However, it's still part of the ongoing discussion that we need to mobilize resources towards collecting all data in the vast glams. Thank you.
Thank you, Isa. And Steve, I think you're the last word in this panel.
I'll be quick. I think there's no technical barriers to doing that. I think the ability to federate the data systems and join them up exists. It's pretty standard. I think there are two main barriers to this. Firstly, it's around communications between the different groups, because aligning data often comes down to issues with aligning vocabulary and data standards, and all those things will need to be worked through, but they're not unsurmountable. The second one is perhaps a little bit more difficult, and that's around data is power, and data is worth a lot of money, and often countries don't want to join up their data. I've seen, from my own perspective in the Sustainable Development Goal reporting of SDG 14.3 on marine acidity, only 40 countries are submitting data. We know a lot more countries have those data, but through national interests, that they're not even being submitted to an SDG call. So how do we persuade nations of the greater good of sharing those data more broadly? I think that's not a job for me as a scientist, but that's one of the main barriers for data sharing.
Okay, so please, everyone, thank you to the panel. Let's give them a big hand. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you. So I would like to welcome Dimitris and Amy back up to kind of provide your reflections on what the discussion has been. And we will keep it succinct as we have another speaker still to go.
You want to sit or stand? Or?
I think, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so welcome back, and starting with Amy and then Dimitris. Very briefly, what are your key takeaways and thoughts of the panel discussion? And then I will go into the second question immediately, which is, how do you think what you heard here today, can connect to the OARS program, and how can we bring it forward?
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I think what kept coming up was that everything that we do on land has an impact on the ocean. I've tried to really think about something that doesn't, and if you can think of something, please do let me know, because I haven't come up with anything. So what kept coming up was that we need to connect more, we need to connect with knowledge, those with knowledge and making decisions on land and the ocean, and connect those with each other, and also connect with indigenous knowledge, those who have that, who perhaps have a better understanding as well of everything that goes on in their local ecosystems, and understand that connection better. Also focusing on reconnecting those lost linkages and reconnecting with each other to co-design more holistic solutions. Maybe my key takeaway was that we have enough knowledge to act, and that we need to start acting, although there is more science to be done, of course. In terms of what the OARS program will learn from this, I think we're going to keep connecting with more stakeholders. We need to bring more of those stakeholders working on land into the conversation. I think we still have more work to do there, and that'll be what we'll be focusing on going more into the future. Thanks.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. And Dimitris, yep, you have a mic.
Thank you, Gustav.
Same question to you. What are your takeaways, thoughts of the panel, and how do we bring it forward in Healthy Rivers, Healthy Ocean endorsed program of the Ocean Decade?
First of all, I'm very sorry that that we have restricted time. The discussion just started to be interesting, of the panel, I mean. I'll try to address both questions at the same time. I mean, from what I heard, we're on the right track, meaning that trying to link the source to sea continuum in terms of understanding ownership among the stakeholders and action. This is the right way forward. I liked what Steve said. It's the first time I hear this from a scientist. We know enough to act. Scientists also has been always saying global water partnership is a lot about partnerships. Cynthia, exactly, is about partnerships. This is what we're doing for a living, let's say. Most of the time scientists come and say, you know what, money for more data sets, etc., which is true. It is necessary, but we know we need to act. And this is connected to Jessica's question. It is not necessary to simulate the universe so as to be able to act. We need to, of course, then act locally. It is exactly what Steve said. Countries to share data. It depends on the socioeconomic background in each country. The embedments are different, but it boils down that data is linked to sovereignty and to a cost. And this need to be addressed. This is something that we need to take on board and work with policymakers and figures like Cynthia that can act globally so as to have solutions in this regard locally, nationally or locally. Now, points apart from this, more funding for systemic action, totally agree. A lot of money. I was astonished last year in Lisbon. Everybody's acting, private sector as well. If you think the action on the ocean and the funding, then the freshwater community is like the poor sibling, honestly. But it's not about who gets more. It's about how money is being used so as to follow the flows and to simulate nature. We don't do it. We have governance, as Cynthia said, is sectoral. Governance is not integrated in terms of its spatial components. So we need policies in this regard. Private sector, I don't understand. I mean, on the one hand, they do understand that their business is linked with sustainable natural resources management. On the other way, they do not participate, they do not take their share. It's again about governance, it's about rules. I was talking to a CFO of Coca-Cola in the Med and asked him, do you have data? Yes. Will you share it if there is a law?
Okay.
Nothing else. And I'll finish with I'll finish. So what we take is that there is a pool of scientists and science to reach out and contribute in the Healthy Rivers, Healthy Oceans. There is slowly but steadily a core group of people that understand the need, and they just need some kind of push or some action to get them together to act in this regard. And the work that is being done by Seaway, by Mr. Thompson, by the Alliance, it is, but we need to do more things and the reassurance about partnerships. And we need to have all those groups working together. That's my key take out, and I think the Healthy Rivers for Healthy Oceans can contribute in this regard.
Fantastic. Thank you very much to both Dimitris and Amy. Thank you very much. And so I think we are not just done yet, and we may have saved the very best for last to reflect on this session, helping us to turn our gaze forward towards the future. Very pleased to introduce an ambassador and I would say friend to the Source to Sea ethos. Honored to introduce Peter Thomson, UN Secretary General, Special Envoy for the Ocean since 2017. Peter, please join us up here.
Am I going to destroy everything if I put this down? No, okay. Yeah, hi everybody. So here we are, Barcelona. I wrote this when I was on the plane yesterday, so I'll read it to you rather than ad-lib as I usually do. So, ladies and gentlemen, many thanks to the organizers. Source to Sea, as you say, I've been working with Seaweed for many years now, and thanks for the great work you do. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to air some views early in the week, in this momentous week, in fact, that we're part of. We've been anticipating it for so long, and here we are. 3 years and a bit into the UN Ocean Decade for Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. We are going to jointly assess here in Barcelona how ocean science has been faring to date and what priorities we should be setting for the remainder of the decade if we, as the phrase goes, if we are going to get the ocean science we need for the ocean that we want. You know, it's said that knowledge without action is wasteful, and that action without knowledge is foolishness. And where's Steve? Yeah, I mean, we need action. I've been doing it for 10 years now, but my God, we need the science because we are so insufficient in our knowledge when it comes to the ocean. And so ocean scientists, ocean activists, let's make sure we're working hand in glove. Two vast shadows loom over today's event. The first is that we live in the age of plastic. From the clothes we wear to the food we eat, plastic permeates our lives and the world at large. Cheap, pliable, durable, waterproof, its utility is indisputable. And yet, scientific studies are increasingly demonstrating that many thousands, emphasize thousands, read a recent report which said there's 4,200 chemicals used in plastic which are questionable in terms of our health. So that scientific studies are increasingly demonstrating that many thousands of chemicals used in the manufacture of plastics are hazardous. They're hazardous to us and to wildlife, causing endocrine disruption, mutagenicity, I'll pronounce it properly, mutagenicity, I think that's it. Basically, your genes are getting altered by some of these chemicals. Carcinogenity, and more. It's reminiscent of our past struggles with tobacco, and we're now approaching a crossroads in our relationship with plastic, crossroads at which we'll have to decide whether we value utility over the well-being of our children and of nature. The second shadow is that of chemical pollution. Yes, we have a massive problem in the form of plastics pollution, but the problem of chemical pollution is just as pernicious, and many would say more so. Nutrients like fertilizers, urban detritus, sewage chemicals, pharmaceuticals, heavy metals, toxins, other hazardous materials from activities like waste management, agriculture, manufacturing, and mining. They're carried off by runoff and rivers to accumulate in coastal waters and spread out into the wider ocean. The effects of this deluge of chemicals upon the ocean and ultimately upon us are poorly understood. But we need only to look at the chronic neurological disorders caused by mercury in the famous events of Minamata to understand that dire consequences do arise from dumping harmful substances into the ocean. I said these shadows loom over us, but of course they do more than loom. They surround us. The atmosphere, our soil, our roads and buildings, all are permeated by them. Through the hydrological cycle alone, everything is connected. And therein lies the rub that's brought us to this event. The ultimate dump for most of the pollution I've mentioned is the ocean. Thanks to the exertions of a few, and we heard from OARS working group today, Amy, that was a great presentation, thanks for that. Thanks to the exertions of the few, and the many, in fact, are waking up to pollution's threat to the well-being of humanity, and, as Steve said, to nature as a whole. Around the world, ideas and efforts are advancing, and happily, imbued within them is the source to sea ethos. Some call it an approach or an action plan, but I call it an ethos because, like sustainability or intergenerational justice, thinking in source-to-sea terms is fundamental to maintaining a healthy relationship with the planet on which we live. Along water's journey from precipitation, from percolation into groundwater, from surface runoffs into drains and creeks and rivers, there are multiple points at which the source-to-sea ethos comes into play. As I was reading those words, I thought about, I used to live in London for about 5 years until recently, and there was a pub near my house, and all these middle-class fellows standing out there having their pints, having a nice time, smoking their cigarettes while they're out on the pavement, and bam, you know, everywhere you go in London, they're just cigarette butts everywhere, and you know where they're going. You know, they're going straight down into the Thames and out into the ocean, and you know, creatures are eating them, and that's plastic, and it's coming back to us in the creatures. Every time I walk past that pub, I used to think, God, you guys, can't you put these damn things into some sort of waste receptacle rather than throw them in the gutter? So as a long-term collaborator with SIWI, I commend to all who haven't yet familiarized themselves with the S2S platform, which is the multi-stakeholder action platform for source-to-sea management. And you can do that by visiting SIWI's website, of course. The S2S platform is a network of organizations committed to promoting, implementing, and building expertise on source-to-sea management. It presents a broad range of tools, which is necessary because management kicks in at many levels, you know, regional and national and subnational and local levels. And it addresses barriers to comprehensive application of source-to-sea science and policy and practice, including inherent knowledge gaps. One of the most artificial of these divisions is that between freshwater community and the ocean community, a division that is patently counterintuitive to the hydrological cycle. So much so that we can say with certainty that bringing SDG 6 and SDG 14 into closer harmony is just a logical component of the source-to-sea ethos. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been allocated 5 minutes to speak, so I'll conclude now, but not without emphasizing 2 points. The first being the importance of what Economist Impact and Nippon Foundation are putting forward under their Back to Blue initiative. At the recent World Ocean Summit in Lisbon, they launched their roadmap for action for a global ocean free from the harmful impacts of pollution, notably from chemical pollution. Their aim is to produce a strategic framework to build an evidence base that will tackle ocean pollution collectively. And I recommend that you take a good look into whether you might be able to play a part in that process. They have asked in the launch that we all take a good look at that and be part of it. It's I have to say, global in thinking, and if it is taken up by the global community, I think it may well be a big part of the solution. The second point I want to close on is the gravity of the plastics treaty, which is currently under multilateral negotiation. This is our chance, a once-in-a-generation chance, to deal to the hazards attendant with the ills of plastic and its damaging chemicals. Scientists around the world who are true to the principles established by our internationally agreed environmental conventions should be in the bear pit, shaping the policies of the national delegations negotiating the treaty, so that finally the rampant run of chemicals in plastics can be brought to heel. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks to SDG 14.1, ocean pollution will be a major component of the work of the UN Ocean Conference in Nice in June next year, 8 to 13 June. Between now and then, we'll have such high-level events as the Our Ocean Conference in Athens next week, the Commonwealth Ocean Ministers meeting in Cyprus also next week, the SIDS Conference in Antigua next month, and the Immersed in Change Conference in Costa Rica, June 6 and 7. And of course the CBD COP in Colombia, extremely important on the whole plastics and chemical pollution question. So at all these gatherings and more, these 2 points that I've just highlighted will be deliberated on and pushed forward for translation into action by the outcomes of the next UN Ocean Conference in Nice next year. And I look forward to being part of that process with you all. SEWI, OARS Working Group, Back to Blue and others. Let's make sure that we're ready to imbue the UN Ocean Conference in Nice with the source to sea ethos. Thanks for your attention.
Okay, many thanks, Peter, for the closing address and accepting our invitation to come to this event. I think we can all agree that the source to sea ethos is fundamental, and I like the way you put it. The hydrological cycle is counterintuitive to siloed approaches between freshwater and ocean. Also for reminding us of the connection between human and ocean health, I think is very important. So we heard many different perspectives and voices here today, and as we are about to close the session, I just want to thank all speakers, panelists. I also want to thank the technicians here at ICM. Moving from knowledge to action in holistic ways is a collaborative effort, and that is very much what we at the Action Platform for Source to Sea Management is about, an open platform, multi-stakeholder partnership, working towards a world in which land, freshwater, coastal, and marine resources are managed holistically, balancing benefits for the environment, communities, and economy from source to sea. So please do talk to myself as representative of the Source to Sea platform, Stockholm International Water Institute, as well as our co-conveners today, Global Water Partnership with Dimitris, and the Plymouth Marine Laboratory with quite a few of you here today, but Amy, of course, Steve, and Tekla here in the audience. So, as conveners, we'll continue the Source to Sea conversation in the coming days at the Ocean Decade, and I thank you very much for being here, and hope to connect with you across the next few days. So from all of us here today, thank you. Goodbye.